Tools for Teachers podcast, where each week we talk about a free piece or two of technology that you can use in your classroom. I'm your host, Shanna Martin. I'm a middle school teacher, technology coach, and personalized learning coordinator for my district.
And I'm her producer/husband, Fuzz Martin.
Hey.
By the way, I changed my Twitter description to say husband/producer.
Nice.
Or producer/husband. One of the two. To you.
Husband, probably first.
Yeah, I did put husband first.
That's good.
Because that's what I do most often.
Yeah, this is true.
And then producing, once a week.
Once a week. Nice.
But I love both
of them. I have to say,
of
the sound is a little different down here.
Yeah.
It's less echoey.
It is. I installed a
Ceiling.
recessed or a drop ceiling. And
we have a ceiling.
We have enough lights in here to land an airplane.
This is true.
But it feels more homey.
Welcome to the podcast. And
by the way,
sound, we don't have a studio, and we used to always do our podcast at the kitchen counter, but that shifted to the basement craft table here during our time in quarantine, just because we can have the mic set up all the time down here.
Yeah, we've got before we just had little tripod mic stands, and now we've got actual boom stands.
Right, on my craft table.
On your craft table. You can move them anytime you want, by the way, if you need to. But let me tell you why this episode is special to me.
It's 75.
It is episode 75. Why is that number important to me?
I don't know.
Because that was my number in high school football.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was number 75 because I really liked Howie Long from the the Los Angeles Raiders at the time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, glad we could bring it back to high school.
75! Fuzz Martin!
Yeah, okay. This mini episode just turned into a 12-hour podcast about high school football.
I'm going to wake up A, the 5-year-old, and B, the 5-month-old puppy.
Yes.
With my antics. So, mini episode today.
It's a mini episode today. So, there's so many things going on. We've got holidays. We have classes in quarantine. We have people working from home. We have so many things going on. But this week, I've really noticed with my staff that, everyone's kind of a little fried.
Yeah.
But we're at the point where the struggle is real.
True.
And our staff has done an amazing job keeping everything in line and everything together. And the majority of our classes are face-to-face. We are face-to-face every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have students that have chosen to learn virtually this year, or they have to shift in and out of quarantine. So our teachers do most of their teaching face-to-face, but then have to also connect with our, say, 10 kiddos at home, which is difficult because you're live streaming. So they're synchronous teaching. While they're teaching kids in the classroom, they're also teaching kids at home at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And
they're trying to find ways for kids to connect to one another and do group work and all that kind of stuff at home and with kids in the classroom. And everyone's like, I don't know what to do. And they're paying money for extra programs. I'm like, hey, we don't have to do that. So while I don't do a ton of chatting about googly things, this week we are doing a mini episode on googly things.
All the googly things. Not all.
A couple of googly things. But just ways that we've been discussing as staff, how we can use the free tools that we have, and just ways of getting kids interacting with one another, both in school and at home. And because we can't do hands-on projects so much, just ways of just communicating and working together. So that is our focus this week. So our little mini episode is virtual lesson time savers with Google.
Cool.
So we're using 3 Google tools out of our little Google suite. And
sweet.
Isn't that pretty sweet? So yeah. And hey, you use googly tools at work too, so maybe you'll have some thoughts on this. So our first tool.
We're big time into Jamboard now.
I know, I'm so excited that we talked about that for half a second one day.
I was at a call this past week where somebody was like, can we just do a Jamboard? And I was like, yes, of course we can. And then we were on a call with a client, and we're like, we need to do a Jamboard. And then their Google security settings wouldn't let them into our Jamboard. They weren't allowed to access Jamboard, so then
Their
they were like,
administrator has to turn it on. Yeah.
they were all mad. Not at us, but at their IT guy, who I'm sure caught heck for it, and now is going to turn on their Jamboard.
Cool. You want to start with Jamboard then? We can start with Jamboard.
Sure.
That was going to be my number 2 choice.
Yeah, that was
but since we've set it up, we might as well talk about
that was
it.
my unfortunate segue because I knew we were going to do something else first. But yes, let's talk about Jamboard.
We'll start with Jamboard. So Jamboard, I feel like people kind of used Jamboard before, and those who have a real Jamboard, like the actual Google Jamboard, use it more often. But now that it's like, hey, an interactive tool, and Google's making more changes and cool things with Jamboard, more teachers are using it. So Jamboard is so many ways of creating, I don't know, just interactive kind of slides, because you can click through. It works great as a whiteboard, which we've talked about before, where you can kind of sketch and draw. New highlight this week, I know some people have kind of posted out there. Google put it out there in the next couple of days. Jamboard, you'll be able to change your backgrounds. When you're in Jamboard before, they had the offerings of grid paper, black, blue,
lined paper.
But now you'll be able to choose your own background, which is something that I have tried to do with Jamboard so often, is setting a picture and then trying to make it a background.
Yeah.
It
and
doesn't.
You accidentally click on it.
Yeah, it doesn't quite work the same. I've used Jamboard for when I did my unit on branches of government, and I wanted the students just to have some kind of ways of manipulating stuff, because just reading it and talking about it, and it's not always the most exciting. So what we did was the cabinet, like the president's cabinet, the members, and matching up like the different seals of the cabinet with what their purpose was. And I put it in a Jamboard with my students where they could drag, and I used the little post-it notes in Jamboard as like the definition piece, and then I used the picture of them, and I'll put some on the website.
Sure,
I'll
some
share
examples,
some samples with stuff. But there are so many cool ways. I've seen pentominoes being created. If anyone's read the book Chasing Vermeer and done pentominoes, or math teachers, where you're making shapes, it's kind of like Tetris, but with specific shapes that you can use for creating images. And I've seen manipulations where there's a lot of math, like dragging and dropping or moving little pebbles around, or cool backgrounds. I've seen our language arts teachers use it for, I always call it like blackout poetry. I think it's what it's called, where it is what it's called. It's where you take a like a story or a paragraph, and then you black out just certain sections of it, and then it picks out the words to make like a poem.
Okay. So
with Jamboard, you can use the highlight tools. You can use the different post-its and move those around. Like, there's different ways of interacting. I'm gonna give a little shout out to the Twitter page. It's Julia's steaming up with Jamboards. Her actual Twitter is Gifted Talk, and she has a fantastic knowledge of Jamboard, and she shares them for free with educators. You just say, hey, I'd love to have access to that, and she has all kinds of awesome resources for teachers to use for Jamboard and creative ideas with Jamboard. I know a lot of our elementary educators use it for math tools where the kids can flip through. And what's really cool about Jamboard is you can create a really interactive lesson, put it in Google Classroom, and then you switch it in Classroom. It says like make a copy for each student. And then each kid is able to interact in their own Jamboard and do the lesson and be creative, and they can do it on their Chromebooks and interactive that way with it. If you're standing up in a classroom, you can interact with it on your smartboard.
Sure.
But it's a cool way to make lessons interactive using technology, so the kids at home are able to interact as well.
So we typically use it for brainstorming.
How do you, yeah, with like whiteboard tools then?
Kind of like what? Yeah, well, we use the Post-it notes most often.
Okay.
And what we'll do is, for instance, we're coming up currently with the name of a new service, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a few of us from the agency and a few of the client. And so what we've done internally, so on the agency side, is we'll have meetings for like an hour and a half, and we put up a little header in like 4 columns with different themes, and then we each create Post-it notes and stick them under those headers of the like a name or a something related to what we're trying to get to.
And you've everyone shared on the same Jamboard.
Yeah, and so everybody's like, and instead of having one person taking the notes, because it gets a little bit, well, 2 things. When you're brainstorming with a group, sometimes not everything can get captured because there's just one person typing. And 2, sometimes that person typing censors what's getting put on the thing.
Well, and you're all working from home right now. So.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
So we're keeping everything, like this way we can brainstorm, get all of our ideas out, and then look at them and then move things around and all that kind of stuff. And then once from there, then we share it with the client, and then we kind of talk about what
And you have been sharing them with the clients then too?
Yeah.
So they can see your brainstorming?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, they're
They're
the ones. They're the ones having this current one that I'm thinking of at the moment is the one that's having issues with their IT department. But what we do is then we share our Google Meet screen.
Okay.
It shows the Jamboard, and then we have one person moving stuff around.
Cool.
When the client can't actually interact with it, but they can still see it and all that. So it's cool. You can color code things and all that kind of stuff. My question to you regarding Jamboard is, do you know of any schools that actually have a Jamboard? Like in physical Jamboard?
Like who've actually paid for a Jamboard?
Yeah.
I do not.
Because my thought is, as a school, can you run Jamboard on your smartboard? Because what would be the... So Jamboard,
when you mean when you have a real Jamboard?
Yeah.
There's like specific, like you can connect it with like tablets and stuff, so you can fire information up to it. And
right. It'd be good if everybody had, or if you had 2 places that had a Jamboard, and you're collaborating between the 2, right?
Yeah, it's more of a.
But like for a school,
operation.
A smartboard is probably the better option.
Well, it depends on what your school's needs are.
Right, but I mean,
there's a variety of different types of boards out there.
But like a classroom wouldn't have both a smartboard and a Jamboard.
No, you would have one or the other.
Yeah, right.
Like you're going to have some sort of, and again, not every school has one, but you'd have interactive boards.
And I'm talking currently like December 2020.
Right.
As you're listening to this, you might be listening to this in December of 2025 going, oh yeah, everybody in the world is using a Jamboard right now, because we don't know what Google has done at that point. But just thinking of
you're able to interact with it. Yes.
Because the Jamboard itself is like, last I checked, it was like $7,000.
Yeah. Sometimes you're going to get discounts.
Sure. But a smartboard might also be expensive.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So, then they're always changing, and the screens are always changing, and it's just, compatibility and schools' needs and sponsors of schools and that kind of stuff. So,
sure.
But yes, you definitely can use all the Jamboard tools on a smartboard or any other interactive board, just like kids can use them on their Chromebooks and drag and drop and move things around that way.
Sure.
So, I know compatibility sometimes can be an issue on tablets.
Okay.
Where it doesn't work as well, but it depends on the tablet. So
sure.
Just like anything. But yeah, so Jamboard, there's just so many ways you can create activities. I've started putting together kind of simple activities or templates for activities and then sharing them with the elementary staff so they can swap out a lot of word work or like root practice and things like that. It just makes it a little more hands-on. And the biggest thing is we're trying to do time savers. So you can throw out some interactivities with word parts or math extra practice, and you can share that and not have to reinvent the wheel all the time and share it with students, and they can continue to use it. Even sometimes they got, brain puzzles and things like that where you can use them over and over to save time.
Sure.
So
the one thing that I most often find myself teaching somebody about Jamboard is that across the top, there's the arrows where you can click to have another Jamboard. Or another, it's kind of
slides.
Like, it's like a slide or a sheet. If you're in Google Sheets, it's like having another worksheet. A lot of times people open new ones, and I'm like, oh, just put your other set of thoughts in this other slide or this other.
And usually, like how they've been created, and a lot of educators do it, is where they have like the title slide on the first one, explain the directions for the activity.
Oh, sure.
And then the slides go through for the students for like working through the activity.
Cool.
Yay! So that's Jamboard. Yeah, this is a mini episode. Yeah, right. All right. I was always like, yeah, it's a mini episode because you just have a couple ideas, and then we have all the ideas.
Cool. You got 4 minutes if we're gonna make an official mini episode.
The other thing, I feel the Google tool that is like left behind sometimes.
The redheaded. No.
I wouldn't say that because
that'd be offensive to.
We love the Weasley family in Harry Potter. So
yes.
No.
Though I'm like, I'm colorblind and I'm left-handed, and
it's true.
I have a red beard-ish.
Yep, and brown hair. So it's fine.
There we go.
Has nothing to do with anything. All right, so.
But I make the perfect stepchild.
The Google tool that is not used as often as I feel like it could be, besides like Keep and Task List and all those, but Google Drawing.
Yeah.
I feel it. I know a lot of educators are intimidated by it. They're like, they see it and they're like, ew, I don't want to use it. I don't know how to create word art. I don't know how to do whatever. But Google Drawing, there's so many ways of doing interactive lessons with Google Drawing that saves time. Another one of those, you can create the template, drop it in the classroom, and then you've got group work for kids to work in. So I've been creating in Google Drawing templates for my students. So again, we were talking about like our government unit, the steps and how a bill becomes a law, instead of just having them create a like a project or a list. And I usually have them, like the lesson I normally do, they manipulate the different steps and kind of brainstorm it before I even start with what do you think the steps are and how a bill becomes a law. And when we're doing government stuff, and we play around with it, we do it in groups, and it's like hands-on. Well, I couldn't do any of that this year, so I was trying to figure out how to interact with my kids at home and the kids in the classroom and have them manipulate it. And I used a Google Drawing. I had everything listed that I usually do for their hands-on stuff, and then they were able to move the little like text boxes around, and I had the little, from Schoolhouse Rock, the little Bill Becomes a Law guy, Bill is his name, like in the corner.
Clever.
So, and just by, again, dropping it in classroom and then having either each student create their own, or I have like group leaders where they share it out with their teammates, the kids automatically then have a group interactive piece. You may create it this year, but then you have it for the future to use for whatever you need to. And it just makes it a little more fun that they can be in a Google Meet. They can be interacting in the Google Drawing, dragging, dropping, moving things around. I've used it with our Native Americans. I had pieces. I started with just random kind of pieces to create a totem, and they created their own kind of like group totem, and then they could add other shapes and other colors and like manipulate it and make their own. And I gave them a timeline, like 3 minutes, you guys gotta build this totem. I've seen it with puzzle creation. I've seen like snowman decorating, and I've seen some really cool like in-depth story, like create themes, like put the background and explain the theme and put little characters in there. And I think it's forgotten, like you can manipulate the size of your Google Drawing. You go in, instead of like your page size, you can change inches, like 4 inches by 6 inches, and make little squares. Like you can change all of those things. And there's just so many ways to use Google Drawing that I think it's intimidating, but if you spend a couple minutes, change background, put some text boxes in there, just play around with it a little bit, it's a great way to do group work when kids can't be next to each other.
Sure.
And you've got kids working at home and kids in the classroom, and everyone can still be manipulating and discussing things in a Google Meet and still have some sort of hands-on activity with it.
So
So
we
there's that.
use it for workflows.
Okay.
So we could say in a marketing automation workflow.
Like webbing.
Yeah,
your stuff.
exactly. Like did X or Y happen? X happened, then you draw a line into the next box, and then so if X happened, then this happens. Or if Y happened, then you go into a different set of things. And so it's
That would be cool for like a time saver.
Yeah.
If we're working on time savers here, have the kids web out their
Should
stuff
I be
quick, turn it
playing
in.
games on my phone? Yes or no? Should
Right.
I be doing my home? No, but the yes, you're right though. From a time saver, yes, for instructions it would be good. We also use it from if you're in a school setting and you're working in kind of an IT kind of thing or something like that. We also use it for mapping
Computers classes.
Yeah, like computers and where networking type things to say, okay, we need to connect this to this and this and to this, and make sure those things are there. So that's how we use Google Drawing in a way, and they have like some standard symbols that you can use that are for that.
Yep, I think we've talked about that before when we did like timelines. They have like just set up timelines. They're pre-done. If you want to save some time, throw in one of the templates and it's ready to go. I've also done too where I will take a character, or we just did a documentary that we talked about Dean Kamen, and I dropped him standing on his Segway in a Google Drawing, and I put directions outside of their workspace, and I was like, what inspires you? What has he done to help others? How can you help others? And they did a whole brainstorm and put him in cool backgrounds on his Segway, in space.
By the way,
and all
he's
kinds of
alive,
stuff.
right?
Yes, he is very much alive and does all kinds of things, inventions to help others.
Yes. Even though people may have heard rumors.
Yes, which he actually addresses in the first part
He
of his
does,
documentary.
yeah. So
yes. You've watched it.
believed the fake rumors.
They're not true.
They're not true. He's alive and brilliant.
Yes, very much so. So Google Drawing, I feel like it gets left behind, and you can create quick, simple templates and have your students fill in information and do all kinds of cool interactive stuff in a very short amount of time. So
Very cool.
Don't forget about that. Our last one
Oh, there's more.
is Google Slides. Google Slides is more than just presentations. And if you're using, especially like virtual learners or learning from home, with kids in the classroom or both ways, there are some super cool templates out there for like science interactive notebooks, for readers interactive notebooks. What's cool is like each slide, I've seen teachers like put like a 6-section like slide deck in, makes a copy for each student, and the student fills in their responses. So in classroom, when you're grading, it's really easy because you can just flip through each student's slide instead of having to go back and forth between stuff. Like all of the kids' information is there in a short slide deck. And so there's just a bunch of ways you can use it as like having, I guess, like exit slips or students sharing out their information or doing lab work and not have to look through a bunch of papers or like reading another Google Doc. It's a quick way. If you have an answer on each slide, that's much faster than searching through, information. So there's a lot of cool ways that you can get students' response in a Google slide show instead of just using a regular Google Doc when it comes to sharing information.
Yeah.
And you can say, all right, everyone open up to slide 3. What do you have? And you can just address it that way versus search through your reflection and find this information.
Can I tell you how we've been using sheets or slides?
Slides, yes.
We've been using slides. It probably, I think, based on this show. So we had this problem.
I appreciate that we discuss things here and then you take it back to work.
Yeah,
and then you start using it in the office.
So we had been having an issue where we were using Word documents, and we'd have templates, but every so often the template would get updated and nobody would know that it was updated. They like connect to the VPN and go find it, whatever. Also, when you want to create a presentation or a proposal in our world, it was like really easy to like try and reinvent the wheel every time. So what we did was there's certain like sections like the signature slide or signature, page, I guess.
Right.
And the About Us page and the overview and all that kind of stuff. So what we did was we created a Google Slides template, and now we create everything in Google Slides. And if there's a page that we don't want from that template, we just either skip slide or delete that slide. And we put the information in. One, it keeps, on my side, it keeps the text shorter because people have to write in a horizontal format, which I am a more concise type writer, so I like stuff to be shorter. And then two, people can collaborate on it and like put together a full, proposal or whatever together instead of everybody working on their piece and then sending a Word document around via email.
Which I do appreciate that you do bring this up, because I still hear from a lot of teachers that teach business and just in general that Google is not used in business. And I know some businesses definitely still use Word, but there's also quite a few that shift to Google. So it's always interesting hearing your perspective just because of the
Word
assumption.
Switched to a subscription model like last year or the year before to the Office 365 model.
Right.
And now
schools
a lot of people
can get 365 for free.
A lot of businesses, but this is important though for that exact piece that you were talking about. A lot of businesses use Gmail or Google My Business at the moment. They change the name of it constantly.
Right.
But they use Google for their email and for other things like Google Analytics and all those kinds of things that are important to their business.
Right.
And because now Microsoft is a subscription model and costs them $14 per user per month, it makes sense to just use the Gmail or the Google My Business version. Plus you get the, you can share as a doc, you can share it as a PDF or whatever you might need to. And you can collaborate with people outside your business and all that. So while that used to be true, that businesses don't use Google, it's becoming, I have a number of clients who use that primarily. Google primarily. And it's only going to get to be more as things go on. So it's and one of the problems we have now with employees is them not knowing how to use Google. They know how to use Word and Excel, but they don't necessarily know how to use Google because they don't know how the file structure works and all that because they didn't use it before. They weren't taught how to use it. And now it's important that they are, because this cloud-based operating stuff, whether it's Word or Google, is very much important. So don't get stuck in the world of businesses don't do X, Y, or Z because sometimes they didn't and then they do.
Right. And you got to be flexible with whatever. It may change again in 10 years, and be something else. So
I know colleges use it, and so be nimble to that kind of stuff and be open to different experiences.
Cool.
There you go.
So that was our mini episode that was now 12 hours
longer than most episodes we've done this whole entire quarantine. We're now at a half hour. All right.
On that note, it is episode 75, and we are celebrating that it's your football number and Google tips and tools, saving time, and yet here we are spending quality time with you. Thank you for tuning in to us. This has been the Tech Tools for Teachers podcast. If you ever have any questions, you can find me on Twitter at SmartNWI. And if you want to get more information on the links to the technology discussed in this episode, you can visit smartnwi.com or you can visit us on Facebook. New episodes each week. Thanks for listening. Go educate and innovate.
The ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast and the Smart NWI website are those of the author, Shanna Martin, and not of her employer. Prior to using any of the technologies discussed in this podcast, please consult with your employer regulations. This podcast offers no guarantee that these tools will work for you as described, but we sure hope they do. Have a good one. Thanks for listening to this mini episode of the Tech Tools for Teachers podcast.